Jesus Freak here. So, recently, as you've seen, I've been doing a fair amount of work getting stuff running on an old Canadian home computer called the Nabu. To date, everything I've been doing has been through emulation. My main computer, the same one I use for my video editing, does the job of pretending to be a Nabu so I can make sure everything's working. Thing is, between Marduk and MAME, there's some questions. Some stuff will work on MAME, some stuff will work on Marduk. It should theoretically be the same for both, but it's not. So, but a couple people offer to help me out. And I should, I don't know how long it'll be. Reality is what it is. But I will be getting, eventually, an actual Nabu. Now, my apartment's small. Where the heck am I going to stuff a Nabu? Well, I'm going to stuff it the same place when I did my Sega Genesis video. I'm sitting right here at a coffee table, and I have my cell phone propped up, using a laptop as a sort of makeshift stand. And the laptop's on one side of the table. The other side is, well, right now there's some stuff sitting there, mostly, books, Bibles, and I can just put those somewhere else. And what I'll probably do is stick the Nabu there, stick the same monitor that you saw when I was testing out the Sega stuff. I'll be using that because it has the connector I need. It's a composite monitor. And I'll set everything up right here next to me. Now that's just going to be a start. Once I'm able to, hook things up to the network, and probably use my laptop to serve as a head end and start working on getting other stuff I'm going to need. The head end is, of course, analogous to how the Nabu was originally designed to be used. You download all your software from the cloud. That's not the entirety of what I'm ultimately going to do. And I'm probably going to get a little bit of support for that too, although I'll probably also be on my own for some of the weirder parts. I'm probably going to be looking into buying one of Klyball's floppy disk controllers, and then I'll have to figure out what kind of a drive I need to use to hook up, because I want a real drive. I don't want a GoTech. And that's going to be the trick. I'm going to have to figure out a way to use the head-end software. I already wrote a tool to do some stuff with a head-end, so I'm not completely unversed here. I have a program that actually boots a floppy disk You know, the original Nabu firmware can't boot a floppy disk. There were later development ROMs and stuff that fixed that. I actually wrote code that a boot a floppy disk. I've only tested it in emulation, but a boot a floppy disk, but a download the code off the head end. So I can use the original ROM, which is what's going to come in the Nabu I get. The original ROM can't boot a floppy disk. What it'll do is it'll download from another computer a payload that will then be able to boot a floppy disk. Now, there's other hardware upgrades that are possible in the future. Might be able to get EPROM programmer and burn my own EPROMs. All of this is going to make things a lot easier for me. You know, if I have a Nabu, I can actually make sure, you know, if Marduk's doing one thing and MAME's doing another, what's the real system do? Just take it over here and put it in. And I'd be able to, you know, buy some old Tandon drive or something and make some actual floppy disks. 5 1/4 inch discs ain't easy to find anymore. I'd still find some old stock here and there. Maybe I can figure out ways to produce the stuff I've been working on. Now, I haven't been talking a lot about the stuff I've been working on. You've seen the Zoom 909, you know, Buck Rogers' Planet of Zoom. You've seen that running on Marduk. In fact, this is part of the problem. It works on Marduk. It doesn't work on MAME. And I've gotten mixed reactions on whether it works on Metal. So I need to resolve this. And I'm going to have my own Metal. And of course, there's going to be the question, what are you going to use for a joystick? You don't have any Atari joysticks, since Nabus use Atari or Commodore controllers. Well, actually, I do. You see, many years ago, a friend of mine in Canada sent me a Sega Master System. And I don't think it's here. Someone get my attention over on Discord. This is what I'm going to use as the joystick for my Nabu. Sega Master System gamepad. Giving me the eye there. And probably be easier than trying to play the games. You know, I grew up, yes, I did play a lot of games on, you know, actual early 80s joysticks. But I grew up with, you know, NES pads, Super Nintendo pads, Genesis pads. I'm more comfortable playing video games with a gamepad than a joystick. So this is going to be a pretty nice way to test things out, and it's still more or less period correct. So we'll see how things work out. Maybe I'll even look into trying to get some of this stuff legitimated. I've been fighting with a certain game where I actually have a disassembly of the MSX code, and I'm using this, and I've I'm actually pretty far along, although I'm still having some trouble figuring out a few things because it's not a very well commented disassembly. But Load Runner. It's a game I played a lot as a kid. Used to be one of my favorite games on the Apple IIc. Well, there was an MSX version developed by Compile. And it's a very good port. I got it about 90% ported to the Nabu from the MSX. Now, it doesn't have the editor. Now, Load Runner on the MSX only had half the levels, it's 76 levels, because it had to be, it had to fit on a cartridge with no extra hardware. There was only room for half the game. Now, I'm also designing my stuff so that it only has to load once, so I'm still limited by what I've got. I'm limited to about 48K because I need room for CPN. The MSX version was limited to 32. So, there's actually more room here. I was able to move it down, make more room at the top of memory. I can get not the whole game, but about 80% of it instead of 50. Instead of 76 levels out of 150, I'm going to go all the way up to 120. And I've looked at how the levels are stored on the MSX, looked at how the levels are stored on the Apple II version, which is the original, by Doug Smith. And I figured out a way to go from the Apple format to the MSX format. So I can actually just use the Apple levels exactly as they are. It's the same 28 by 16 grid. In addition, if I can manage to get, I'm having some trouble with this. I'm having trouble getting the controls working. If I can get Load Runner to work on the Nabu, it'll take about 5 minutes, other than, time to design a new title screen, to get Championship Load Runner, which is another 50 levels running on the exact same engine, also running on the Nabu. So, I'm hoping that I can do this. There's a number of other games I'm trying to port. I'm having, a lot of the time it's the same problem. I can't get the controls working right. That, how I'm trying to do it with the MSX, just translating the MSX code straight, it isn't working. So, you might know some of the games that I'm thinking of trying to get over. Some of them I've actually made some progress on. Galaxian, I've ported. It's not working yet, but once it's working, it's actually better than the Nabu version, which is odd. Most of the Nabu ports actually better than the MSX ports. Unless they're the same ports, some of them are. Bosconian, Galaga. Galaga is another game I really loved as a kid. Tank Battalion. Arkanoid's one I'm looking into trying to get running. I could go further. I really need a Z80 expert. I don't speak Z80. I'm really fumbling. It's a miracle I've done what I've done. I don't speak Z80, but we'll see. I've got a wish list of about 3 dozen games I want to get running. Maybe I'll consider actually, talking to some of the rights holders. Some of them have been pretty open about unofficial ports. Tozai, who owns the rights to Load Runner, they allowed someone to do an Atari 2600 port. So maybe they'd be open to me making a sort of official release of the version I'm working on. Namco might be open for the right amount of, wallet grease. Sega, Konami. These big names, so it might cost a lot of money to get the rights. And it's like, why bother? These computers have been bricks for 35 years. It's been a learning experience. I think I've learned more in 3 months than in the past 20 years. My brain's hurting. Jesus, freak out.